Hey, and welcome to
Hey,
another episode of Kitchen Table Progressives with me, Joyce Nance, and
Matt, Paul, Paul. What I'm in witness shelter program or whatever. Paul Richardson, Paul W. Richardson. I'm at least that's what it says on my witness. What are my witness papers?
oh my God, remind me not to get him in my comedy act. All right. Um,
That was
anyway,
pretty fun, actually.
all right.
My
He,
witness protection papers.
he amuses himself. Anyways,
So
um, today we have two, sadly, not very funny subjects that we want to talk about. We want to talk about first Tyree Nichols' murder, and
mhm.
second Ron DeSantos, I think or DeSantis, um, and his fascist regime.
Yes. Well, go
So,
ahead.
okay, so I'm going to start. I just want to give some background on, I mean, because a lot of people hear like a lot of like talk about Tyree Nichols and, that he got beat up, but they don't know too much more than that. So I thought it would be good to just give some of the details about him and
Yeah.
what happened. So um, it was on January 7th that he was beaten, and then he died 3 days later on January 10th. But
So he was driving home. Wasn't he driving home in his car?
yeah, I'll get to that. I just wanted
Oh,
to,
I'm just.
yeah, he was just driving. Um, anyways, so his he was born on June 5th, 1993. He was just 29 years old, but he was black, and he was penalized for that, or punished to death, basically. He worked for Federal Express, so he drove for a living, and he had a 4-year-old son, was also an amateur photographer with his own photography website. He grew up in Sacramento, California, and then he moved to Memphis a couple of years ago in 2020. Um, so on January 7th, I believe he was just driving home, and I think he was actually just a couple of blocks from his home when he got pulled over by five Memphis police officers who were also
Well, let
black.
me ask you a question about it. So, when you get pulled over, usually you get there's one patrol car that says, "Sir, can I see your license and registration?" How did five cops all of a sudden there?
I am not sure, but it sounds like there had to be at least two police cars. They were members. They were all members of a group called Scorpion that
Yeah.
stood for Street Crimes Operation to Restore Peace, and
Oh, that's clever.
mhm, it had,
But that's
yeah.
that's Scorp.
Well, just
Oh, they're the Ians. Oh, they're it's Scorp, but they're the members of the Scorp, so they're Scorpians.
yeah.
They're the Ians.
So it was
Well,
formed.
they all name Ian. No.
That Scorpion group was formed in October 2021. So, like about 1 year and 3 months later, that's when this happened. I guess it's probably like other groups like that where they kind of lift themselves above the law, so to
Yeah.
speak, because they're a Scorpion.
They're on steroids, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what they're going to do.
Right. And,
Yeah.
or, where they are just part of a group that just makes them even uglier than they were as individuals. It's now disbanded. Okay.
Oh, that's nice.
I don't know how much that changes anything, but I guess that was the least they could do. Um, so there
Well,
were,
one of the things I've heard about these scorpion groups is that they talk about how many, they like to boast of how many arrests they've made, but
mhm,
that's not the metric. The metric is what is your conviction percentage based on the arrests? Not just how many arrests. I mean, they go out and kick everybody's ass and arrest them, but that's, I mean, I think they could also put in the metric, how many people did you kill that you arrested too? I mean, because if
Yeah, I really don't know. I think last year there was like something like 1,100 citizens killed by the police last year. I think I don't know if it was the highest ever, but it was up there. Anyways, there were other people there at the time that it happened. They're not in the video. I watched a couple of the videos. They're horrible. Anyways, what happened was, this is just kind of the detail of what happened, because it's pretty horrible. At the traffic stop, officers pulled Nichols out of his car as he said, "I didn't do anything." And they supposedly stopped him because of reckless driving. So that was the worst thing that he did at the time they yanked him out of his car. And the officer shouted, "Get on the fucking ground. I'm going to tase your ass," for a traffic violation. And this is before he fought back or anything. Officers pushed Nichols to the ground. And then at 8:25, a struggle began. They tried to pin him, yelled at him, pepper sprayed him, and he got away from 5 police officers, which Tyree Nichols was, I think he was a little bit, I don't know how tall he was, but he was very, very thin guy. He was not a big guy at all, like at all.
So he got away.
He got away, and he got actually, I think he got like a half a mile away from them before they caught up to him.
You mean he ran?
He ran. Well, I do not blame him.
No, I'm just trying to get the facts.
Yeah, no.
I didn't know this part. Okay, so
yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying, is I think there's a lot of the whole thing that people don't know. So 2 more police arrived. Actually, I'm not sure how many were there when they first pulled him out, but 2 more police units arrived at the scene of the traffic stop at 8:29, which was, I guess, a couple of minutes after he took off. And then somebody got out of their car and said, "I hope they stomp his ass." Again, this is for a traffic stop.
Reckless driving would entail, first of all, speeding at, I don't know what the exact standard is.
Oh, yeah, right. It has to be over a certain...
yeah, like 25 miles over this limit. And other dangerous, it's not just speeding, it's changing lanes or crossing lanes, making illegal turns or illegal lane changes while at a high rate of speed.
Right.
So they have no do they have any demonstration that was true? No.
Well, I have yet to read any specifics about that.
Okay.
After he broke free, officers caught up to him a half a mile away. Which
he was headed towards his house.
I'm going to guess he was, because he was almost home.
Almost home. That's right. Yeah.
So, and he outran, I don't know how many of them went after him. I think 2 or 3. He outran them, big tough cops for half a mile. That is not nothing. He was then beaten for 3 more minutes, and that was the worst part right there. One of the cops said, "I'm gonna baton the fuck out of you." Another officer pulled Nichols to a standing position, restrained his hands during this time, and then he was punched in the face by multiple officers. Eventually, he fell to a kneeling position. Within the next minute, Nichols was kicked by an officer. As the footage shows, 5 punches to the face. New York Times report that Nichols repeatedly cried out for his mother and did not appear to ever strike back during the beating. That is very significant. By 8:37, Nichols was handcuffed and limp, Officers propped him against the side of the car. After Nichols was on the ground, the officers convene and share their stories about their arrests. One officer bragged, "I was hitting him with straight haymakers, dog," while another exclaimed, "I jumped in, started rocking him." Medics arrived at 8:41, but did not begin to assist Nichols until 16 minutes later. An ambulance arrived at 9:02 and took Nichols to St. Francis Hospital, and he got them there at 9:18, where but only after he had complained of shortness of breath. On January 8th, the department stated that the traffic stop was due to reckless driving. Tyree Nichols died on January 10th. And so now,
what do we know? What's the cause of death?
they haven't released the autopsy yet. I have the police report here if you want to hear that. Do you?
Well, how about the highlights?
Well, this is the highlights.
There probably aren't. It probably isn't terribly verbose, is it?
No, it's just a pretty short paragraph.
Motherfucker ran away from us and we kicked his ass. Right?
Police report written at 10:05, so they wrote it like about an hour after he got in the ambulance.
All right.
Stated that these are just the officers' names. Responded to an aggravated assault by a suspect, Tyree Nichols. Remember what we just said about him not striking back at all, and they're calling it an aggravated assault.
Yeah.
On the victim,
Aggravated assault would mean high, tending towards cause great injury, possibly even fatal.
Right. Yeah. Like with something in your hand, or
yeah. Well, it could be without. It could be, but that would mean the aggravated. Yeah, there was an aggravated assault. They were committing the aggravated assault.
Yeah, right, but that's the opposite of what they say in the police report. One of the officers responded to an aggravated assault by suspect Tyree Nichols on the victim of another officer. They're calling the other officer a victim. After that same officer observed Nichols' blue Nissan driving recklessly at a high rate of speed and driving into oncoming traffic before conducting this traffic stop using blue lights and sirens. Mm-hmm. It's stated that Nichols was ordered to exit the vehicle, but alleged that he was refusing lawful detention. I don't understand why you have to be detention for a traffic stop, and was sweating profusely, was irate when exiting, and started to fight with the detectives, refusing to comply with verbal commands. And at one point grabbed Officer Martin's gun.
Oh, yeah, they always do that.
Yeah, I know.
He went for my gun.
Right,
yeah.
But there were 4 videos of this.
That's kind of like the Brown in Ferguson, Michael Brown case. He went for my gun.
Mm-hmm. I know. Well, it's it's the cop's job to keep track of their guns.
Just say that's all you need. That is the get out of jail free card. He went for my gun. You don't have to really prove it. Just say he went for my gun.
Yeah. Well, but sadly for them, or happily for the quote unquote justice, there's 4 videos. So then another officer deployed his chemical agent, which I assume was pepper spray, and then a taser. I mean, these 2 things are not nothing. I was pepper sprayed once in a class. I almost had to go to the hospital from that alone.
Yeah.
Which they said had no effect on suspect Tyree Nichols.
Probably because he was on drugs. He was like a monster on drugs.
It had no effect on
Wait a minute. I mean, I can already see the argument. This is what they're going to say. This is the George Floyd. That he was like a monster on drugs. It had no effect on him.
He was a little skinny guy. I don't know how he can become a monster.
Well, because that justifies. We had to do it. I mean, The pepper spray didn't do anything. The taser didn't do anything. Yeah, we had no choice. But I mean, taser, pepper spray, batons, and it's like none of it did any good. He was just like he was like a monster. Yeah, this is what's coming. This is what they're gonna say.
Yeah. So then he ran away, and then they caught up with them, and then they say officers tried to detain him.
They just now come on now.
That's a horrible description of what happened. Detained. Nichols allegedly continued actively resisting, pulling duty belts, grabbing Officer Smith police vest. Okay, he was probably trying to keep from falling down. Deployed his baton. Have you ever been hit by one of those batons?
No.
Okay. Well, again, because I took like advanced security guard training, so that's how I got pepper sprayed, and they also had the baton, and they wanted you to get like hit. So it was just like a little tap, really, against your leg that they did, and it hurt like an MF.
So are those what are they made of? Rubber or what?
They're metal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're metal and they're long and skinny.
It's a metal bar.
They telescope out. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've seen those.
Yeah. Yeah. And they, you just like a little whip of the wrist and ow. So if somebody starts like slamming you with it, oh my God, that's probably what did it, was the baton.
Yeah.
But it was probably a combination. So then, it says the release videos of the beating did not corroborate the officer's claim that Nichols reached for any weapons.
No.
None of the officers indicated they were threatened, nor did any of the officers communicate the alleged reaching to fellow officers during the stop.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, the cops were lying. They killed somebody. They're probably going to go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how it would all turn out if the cops had been white.
If the cops had been white.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure I get your point.
In other words, these were the 5 officers that got arrested are all black.
Yeah, I understand that. Were there any white officers there?
I don't know. They not involved in like the general melee, but there were other people there, paramedics, I think some other cops, and I don't know what their story was. Well,
of course we hear that it's not racism because the cops were black.
Okay. I'm not going to buy that like 1 second.
No, well, it's a system of oppression, and I know people don't like when I say this, but during slavery, there were black slaves that were sort of promoted as overseers. They had favor with the slave owners,
right?
And I won't say, somebody really jumped on me for saying that they handed out most of the beatings, but they did, I don't know how many, but they handed out the overseer.
They did it. They definitely did it.
They definitely did, because that's what they got paid to do. That's why they were getting their extra favor. And the other thing is the big fat white man doesn't want to go out and get all bloody and dirty by whipping, unless he has a personal thing against one of these slaves. They don't want to get into it. They just want order, and the regular everyday beating, which wasn't 40 lashes that nearly killed them, but the regular kind of kick your ass, stay in line, was administered by overseers who were black. And so, but they were part of the oppression system.
Yeah, that was a bad system, and the system is alive today, I'm sad to say.
Yeah.
So anyways, that is my topic. And
I think it bears more, I just, what's the conclusion?
The
This is this
conclusion they
George
use
Floyd.
is that America is super racist in almost everything that is done every day.
Well, I think it's the major. It is obviously the number one crux of the issue in the United States is racism.
And I just
That's
want
why
to
they.
I want to add also to that that when I say racism, I mean white on black racism. I mean, there's other racism problems and they're also awful, but this one is the worst of the worst.
Yeah, yeah. It's historically fueled and it continues to be as ugly, really, as it's ever been. Considering that we have, I mean, it's pretty ugly. Considering there was a war, constitutional amendments, and supposedly things are different. But considering this is supposed to be, it's not. We don't have slavery, and we're not in a wartime civil war over slavery. It's pretty bad to think that I would never expect that in my community I would be killed by a cop. I never had fear of that. I've been busted a couple times for like cannabis and nothing, never even arrested. They
Right. But I
they took
mean,
it away.
I don't know how many people would even think of the possibility of being killed at a traffic stop for, any kind of driving, unless you were like purposely mowing people down on the street or something.
Right. So the question about this reckless, this would have to be horribly reckless driving. I mean, it would be, I don't know what the next step above reckless driving is. Negligent driving is even worse, but it just sounds like in order to haul somebody out of the car, once they've been, wait a minute, you haul somebody out of the car after a high-speed chase, maybe.
Right, but I didn't hear anything about a chase.
That's what I mean. This isn't they pursued this as if it's not a traffic stop, but it was a high-speed chase.
Yeah, but that was never said.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So in other words, that's what I'm saying is what we seem to have skipped past the part of, I need to see your license and registration, sir. So it wasn't a traffic stop. In other words, somebody could have been speeding. He obviously pulled over, right? So it never turned into a high-speed chase.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the thing of it is the Supreme Court, and you probably know when it happened. They decided at a certain point that you couldn't enact capital punishment or dole out capital punishment for a crime unless the crime was murder. But these cops doled out a punishment of capital punishment for reckless driving.
Right. Well, the 1985 Supreme Court decision was that you can't use deadly force on a fleeing felon. Now, that means that it's somebody that apparently has already escaped because he's already determined to be a felon, or maybe it was suspected felon. But that's not what we're talking about here.
No, I wasn't even talking about that. I wasn't even talking. I was just like, if somebody could even be tried for capital punishment, the crime had to be murder. Nothing else. Not breaking into a house.
No, there's no
stealing your car.
And I don't know at what point do they recognize what degree of force they're using?
It
seems like there isn't any. I did this. In other words, I don't see that, and maybe this is probably all training. I think it's all training, and that, in other words, I don't know where the instructions are. Beat the shit out of them with your baton until such time as, no, it's like you use a maneuver. In other words, if you had training in it, I never have, but you use a maneuver with the baton and see what the result is. Did the suspect succumb? And in other words, you don't just keep beating with it. Whatever instrument or agent you use, you don't empty your pepper spray in the face. Maybe the training prescription is that you give 2 bursts of spray with the pepper spray and then evaluate. Did the person stop. And it just seems to me that they're pulling out every tool of punishment that they can. This didn't have any directed goal or objective in terms of what they did, other than to just keep punishing him, keep beating him, and using these baton, pepper spray, whatever else they used.
Yeah,
And then,
I mean, here's my question is, if you think somebody is being disorderly, whatever your definition of that is, uh, and you are multiple people, like, I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe it started with 2 and got into 5, and maybe there were more on the sidelines, but all they have to do is put his hands in cuffs and
Right.
behind him, and put his feet in cuffs if they have to, and put him in the back seat of the car and sort it out later. That's it.
Yeah, I don't understand why. That's a good point. It really,
You don't even
one of these guys.
you don't need to tase them, or because again, there's no evidence that he was trying to hit them. He was just trying to get away, and
Well,
obviously,
here's the thing:
good reason.
is that this is it. Here's the thing: if you really thought it was this bad, you pull him over. One person, one officer should be able to handle him. Say, "Step out of the car, please. Step out of the car," and then you grab one of his wrists, you slap the cuff on, you cuff him, and say, "Why don't you stand right here?"
Yeah.
If you think he's that much of a danger that you want to throw him on the ground, then why put yourself at risk of getting into a wrestling match with him when you could just say, "Step out of the car," and not get next to him? In other words, keep your distance. Say, "Step out of the car. Put your hands on the car," like that. Okay, and now you got his hands, and then you grab this hand, you put it behind. They know how to do this. They're trained to do that.
I know they do.
Okay, so why didn't they? If you're worried about,
this was a special force that should have been
special kick-ass force,
trained, but they just took the word force, and that was their deal.
Well, this is their club. This is their club. We'll all get together, and all scorpions will show up at this point, and this is your basic open up a can of whoop ass club. They did not handle. I would say that they did not follow training, because to throw them on the ground, they put themselves in danger by engaging in the wrestling match.
Yeah.
When they could have simply said, "Step out of the car, put your hands on the roof of the car, put your hands on the top of the car." And what if it doesn't comply with that, then you don't have to get forceful, and then you protect yourself as an officer.
Right.
If you really think it is to grab one of the hands, put one of the cuffs on, put it behind his back, grab the other one. One officer should be able to do that.
Yeah, I didn't see anybody trying to cuff him. I didn't see anybody frisk him. I mean, it was just like they wanted to beat the shit out of him. Period. That was the sole goal.
And they don't.
I don't know if they knew him. I mean, I really don't know. That hasn't come out yet. Or if it was just his race. They don't. What was it? A Hyundai? They don't like Hyundais. I mean, I just don't know what their motivation was, other than they just started something, and then everybody's testosterone kicked in, and
Oh, you know what? I really think that for something like this, a good policy would be, after something like this happens, but within an hour, they all need to be drug tested for methamphetamine. Yeah, because if you act like that,
I was thinking that they needed to be drug tested.
That's methamphetamine type reaction. That's how high they were.
I wouldn't. It's so just. I mean, I understand the racism part. I mean, I don't understand it, but I understand they do it, and everything else. But just that extreme reaction, and not even doing the most common. Just like Joe Blow off the street would say, "Oh, if I was going to pull someone over and I was afraid of him, what would be the first thing I would do? Handcuff him." Okay.
I wouldn't grab him. If I was afraid of him, I would make sure that I kept my distance and order him to do things that would keep me safe, like turn around, put your hands on top of the car.
Right.
And then you know what you're seeing, and then you approach with caution. And then cuff them, and either if you're assessing, say stand right here, or just say, "Come on, I want you to sit in the back of the squad car for a while I figure out what's going on."
Yeah, Yeah.
You don't need to do, I mean, to throw
Not
them on the ground means you're going to engage in a wrestling match, and that's putting yourself at danger, at risk.
I know. And obviously, the cops think they're immune after they saw the whole George Floyd thing play out. They still think, oh, that happened to that guy for doing the bad thing. But
Oh, that's in Minneapolis. That's not
I'm,
Memphis.
I'm immune.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably, I guess they still, that's why I think is that there's, when something this high level of high anxiety, whatever, this high excitement, then I think in all of what they did, I do think they should be drug tested I think that right after the incident, within an hour, they need to report back to the precinct, check in, and they need to submit to drug test.
Yeah. Well, I do not think that happened.
No, I don't think so. And that's just, there's nothing that they did right. I don't see that they did anything right. And then the cops that were standing there, I mean, this is
they didn't intervene. No,
they have a duty.
A couple
They have
of them have been arrested, but I don't know which ones.
They have a duty to protect. If they can't evaluate the situation, and that's the other thing with the EMTs showed up and nobody did anything. They all have a certain duty. They all have a professional duty to act, and I don't see that any of them did. They just let the beating take place as if, okay, well, we'll scoop them up when you're done. I mean, this is a failure of training. This is a failure of
and just
training.
I do know that all those people were fired, but so what? That what is that?
Yeah, well, one person's dead.
Yeah, that is not just punishment.
They'll all have jobs in another couple of months.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that thing that happened in Memphis. Oh, yeah. Well, that happens all the time. It's not your fault. Yeah. Well, we sure need people here, though. Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
The cops, that'll probably not the 5, but the other ones.
I think it's time. I really do think that that we need to have higher qualifications for police officers. I think they should be required to have a degree in criminal justice so they know what negligent breaches they're making.
Well, I could tell you some stories about that, but unfortunately we are out of time. So Paul did not get to tell you about Ron DeSantis being a fascist, but
you already know that, folks.
On the sad news, guys, he will still be a fascist next week. So we can talk about that next week. Anyways, thanks for dropping by today, and we'll see you next time. I'm Joyce Nance, and
this is Paul Richardson.
All right. And have a good night.
Freaking